right, ladies and gentlemen, time for convening the General Assembly as prescribed by the Constitution of the state of Georgia has arrived. The 2017 session of the Georgia Senate will come to order. I'd like to welcome each of our senators and their families to the chamber today. We are delighted that you could join us. And at this time, I would ask that unauthorized visitors to exit the chamber at this time. If you would please take your seats for senators that can. We're going to first have our pledge of the allegiance to the flag, and then we will have our chaplain of the day. If you would please join me as we rise to salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. One of the great joys for me each year is being able to ask our chaplain of the day to join us. And it is one of the great storied traditions of this great august body. And we are very honored today to have one of my dear friends, an individual that I have grown to respect and value and appreciate his wonderful, wonderful work. Dr. Johnny Hunt actually hails from North Carolina, but he is the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Woodstock. When he first came to that church, I think they were averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of about 220 in Sunday school, and today it is probably well over 4,700 in attendance. He has done a wonderful, wonderful job. He has been the president of the Southern Baptist Convention in 2008 and through 2010. He is a man that is a person that's not only committed to his family, his church, but also a wonderful ministry called Timothy and Barnabas Pastors and Wives Retreat, which he has done now for 23 years. He is married to Janet. They have 2 daughters. He is blessed to have 3 wonderful granddaughters and 1 grandson. He just actually wrote a new book that I got a copy of prior to it being released publicly. He is a wonderful author and a wonderful man and an individual who stands firmly for God, and we appreciate him deeply. And if you would, please join me in welcoming our chaplain of the day, Dr. Johnny Hunt.
Well, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and let me say to the House, to you ladies and gentlemen, to our guests and family and friends, it is a joy to be here. I want to take just these few brief moments that have been given to me and share with you really out of the overflow of my own personal time with the Lord. In Titus chapter 2 and verse 6, the Apostle Paul has instructed Titus as he moves to one of the largest Mediterranean islands to train leaders. He begins to instruct him as to what to say. And he makes sort of a single, succinct statement, and he says, as you go to train these leaders, teach them to be people of self-control. And he uses the word sober-minded. It translates the exercise of that self-restraint that governs all passions and desires. It's a call to self-control and self-discipline, the careful management of one's life. It cultivates balance and self-restraint. We've all heard the statement, we'll be remembered for how we finish. I've had the privilege to pastor for 40 years, 30 years in the great state of Georgia at Woodstock, and we are often told in leadership we should begin with the end in mind, not the end of a year, but really even thinking in light of eternity. A study was recently done to attempt to identify how many leaders we can find from Genesis to Revelations. In thorough research, we found 400 leaders. The second question was this: how many of the leaders in the Bible finished well? It is believed that only 20% finished well. Even in my profession, the majority of men and women that serve in this capacity, most will not finish in this capacity. In the context of that research, a wonderful question was asked. What were the qualities, characteristics, and traits of the 80 that finished well? And so I just give those 5 statements to you as food for thought as you begin a new year. Number 1, humility, a voluntary subjection that we think less of ourselves and think more of how we can honor others. Number 2 was intimacy with God. Someone said the word intimacy can be translated many ways, but one wonderful way is to have this mindset. In to me, see. It all begins with my inner life, my private life. I desire to be in private what I can appear to be in public. So intimacy with God. It could be translated this way. Take time to be holy. And if you don't, you won't. If we'll give of our time to the Redeemer, He will redeem our time. Number 3, obedience. Obedience is simply obey. I was thinking this morning of the old hymn, Trust and Obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. And so obedience is probably the strongest word that we'll find in the pages of all of the Old and New Testament books. And then the 4th word is faith. It's really trusting God. There are times in our life, there are things we cannot overcome, things we've never faced, and no one can help us through them other than Almighty God. When I entered a room 6 years ago, and the medical doctor was a close friend, told me that he had found cancer. He cared for me and was very compassionate. But at the end of the day, I needed the one who created me, who I believe with all my heart I'll spend eternity with, to speak into my life and to give me courage and to help me. And then last of all, the ability to receive counsel. Everyone needs a faithful friend. The Bible says that the wounds of a friend can help us, but the kisses of an enemy can really lead to our destruction. All of us need a faithful friend that will not tell us what we want to hear, but what we really need to hear. It's my prayer that each of us would finish well. Would you bow with me in prayer? Our Father, with grateful hearts, we simply bow to say we love you. And I acknowledge this morning that I need you. And I thank you for these last 44 years since you came into my life. What a privilege it's been to know you, and what a joy it has been to serve you. Thank you for these men and women of the Senate and their places of service, privilege, and responsibility. Grant them wisdom from heaven as they lead this great state and speak into our policies and even make policy. I pray you bless them. Bless their homes, their marriages, their families, and their friendships. I pray you'd give them the desires of their heart that are in keeping with the will of God. And I thank you that as we find ourselves delighting in you, you do indeed give us the desires of our heart. Bless this year. May it be a banner year in the Senate. For we make our prayer in Christ's name. Amen.
Who is the nurse? He's going to find out the nurse's name. We ought to introduce her too.
Yeah.
My son, he was just sitting there playing a washer box. You know, the guys are different.
I guess assisting Dr. Kaufman will be,
It's Casey's day.
what's that?
Pardon me?
What Stacy's day? So we have one. She was the nurse last year.
She was.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to write on there? You're welcome to.
No, I think we're good.
You okay? Everything good so far?
Doctor of the Day. Let me have the Senate's attention just for a moment, if I might. It is a great tradition every single year that Dr. Kaufman, who is with us, he is a board certified in internal medicine. He earned his medical degree from Morehouse School of Medicine. Dr. Kaufman has been practicing internal medicine at Kaufman Clinic with offices both in Atlanta and Woodstock. I will tell you that he is not only here every single year. I was actually running in a race one year, and he comes blowing past me and really humbled the lieutenant governor. But he is a wonderful, wonderful individual. We've got a great nurse that will be returning this year, Miss Rudy, and I know that all of you or Miss Ruby, and I know that all of you will be very pleased to have her. But Dr. Kaufman's father was very instrumental in our medical station, and we appreciate so much not only him but his family and the great work that he does. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kaufman.
Good to see you.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I've was trying to figure out how many years I've been coming down here. I think this is year 28. I don't know if I feel that old, but I am. But it's an honor to be here and to be of service to all of y'all. I know how busy it is, and things do happen. But the most important person of the medical station is Ruby Butts, and she likes to hide behind there. But I want you need to wave at everybody and say hello. There she is. But we are here. We're here to help you in anything you need, so please don't hesitate to ask. Y'all have a good session.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. The Secretary will read a communication from the Honorable Brian Kemp, Secretary of State.
I, Brian P. Kemp, Secretary of State of the State of Georgia, do hereby certify that the attached 2 pages constitute a true and correct list of state senators in the General Assembly of Georgia in the 2016 general election held on November 8, 2016, all as the same peer of file and record in this office, and testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the seal of my office at the Capitol in the city of Atlanta this 5th day of January. District 1, Ben Watson. District 2, Lester Jackson. District 3, William Ligon Jr. District 4, Jack Hill. District 5, Kurt Thompson. District 6, Hunter Hill. District 7, Tyler Harper. District 8, Ellis Black. District 9, P.K. Martin. District 10, Emmanuel Jones. District 11, Dean Burke. District 12, Freddie Powell Sims. District 13, Greg Kirk. District 14, Bruce Thompson. District 15, Ed Harbison. District 16, Marty Harbin. District 17, Richard Jeffries. District 18, John F. Kennedy. District 19, Blake Tillery. District 20, Larry Walker. District 21, Brandon Beach. District 22, Harold V. Jones II. District 23, Jesse Stone. District 24, Lee Anderson. District 25, Burt Jones. District 26, David Lucas Sr. District 27, Michael Williams. District 28, Matt Brass. District 29, Josh McCoon. District 30, Michael Dugan. District 31, Bill Heath. District 32, Judson Hill. District 33, Michael Rhett. District 34, Valencia C. District 35, Donzella James. District 36, Nan Orrock. District 37, Lindsay Tippins. District 38, Horacina Tate. District 39, Vincent Fort. District 40, Fran Miller. District 41, Steve Henson. District 42, Elena Parent. District 43, Tanya P. Anderson. District 44, Gail Davenport. District 45, Renee Unterman. District 46, Bill Cowsert. District 47, Frank Ginn. District 48, David Schaefer. District 49, Cecil T. Butch Miller. District 50, John K. Wilkinson. District 51, Steve Gooch. District 52, Chuck Huffstetler. District 53, Jeff Mullis. District 55, Gloria Butler. District 56, John Albers. This concludes the order.
Thank you very much. The Secretary of State has certified the elections of 55 senators, and without objection, all senators certified by the Secretary of State will be seated in the State Senate. We are about to now proceed with our swearing in of each of the individual senators. I first would obviously like to welcome all of the wives, along with the family members that are present here today with each of the individual senators, or husbands, a spouse, I should say. And with that, it is a great honor for me to also welcome to the State Senate the First Lady of the Senate, my lovely wife, Nita Cagle. We are very, very honored to have one of our own former members of this body with us today to administer the oath of office for the senator-elects. All of you know Charlie Bethel, now Justice Bethel, began his service in the Senate in 2011 and served 3 terms until he was appointed to the Court of Appeals just last month. He served in this body as the Insurance and Labor Committee Chairman. He hails from the northwest part of our great state, from Dalton. He is a wonderful family man, an individual that all of us have grown to respect and admire. He spent a good bit of time at the University of Georgia, and he's got all kinds of accolades that none of you really care about. But all of us have grown to love, respect, and value our colleague. I thought it was fitting to have him come back on this very first day of the General Assembly to administer the oath of office. And with that, it is now my privilege and my honor to ask Judge Bethel to administer the oath of office for each of the senators.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor and the Secretary for honoring me with this distinct privilege to swear each and every one of you in. It is a pleasure to be home, and as they say, home is where the heart is, so it is good to be in one of my many homes in Georgia with so many friends. If you would please assume a posture of reverence and a state of sobriety, and prepare yourself by raising your right hand to take the oath of office, and repeat after me. I do hereby solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of this state and of the United States, and on all questions and measures which may come before me, I will so conduct myself as will in my judgment be most conducive to the interests and prosperity of this state. I further swear or affirm that I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money, due this state or due any political subdivision or authority thereof, that I am not the holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States, of any other state or any foreign state, which by law I am prohibited from holding, that I have been a resident of my district for the time required by the Constitution, and the laws of this state, that I am otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia. So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Judge Bethel. On behalf of the entire Senate, I want to thank you for joining us. Sadly enough, though, I'm going to have to ask you to come back because the senator from the 6th missed a word. I heard him miss a word. We may have to do it all over again, but no, only kidding. But let me just add my congratulations to each of the senators, and I want to welcome each of you for what promises to be another exciting, productive legislative session. I look forward to working with each of you as we continue to advance our state with innovative, common sense measures designed to advance all of our citizens' interests. Georgians' priorities are the Senate's priorities, and together we will work diligently to accomplish the people's business over the course of these 40 legislative days. Judge Bethel was graciously agreed to be available for senators who would like to have additional pictures taken on the swearing-in ceremony after today's session. Once we adjourn, you can do that down front and have an official photo made for each of you. I would also remind each senator that you are required to sign your oath of office as well. The Secretary will have those available for you to sign at the rostrum after today's session. It is now time for the morning roll call, and the Secretary will call the rolls of senators. Please signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Let me just remind all the senators, you don't want to miss this first vote on the roll call. Make sure that you push your button. The next order of business will be the election of the President Pro Tem. I recognize the Dean of the Senate, the senator from the 4th District, for the purpose of making a nomination.
Mr. President, I nominate David Schaefer for President Pro Tem and come to the well.
The senator from the 49th. Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th for the purpose of seconding the motion.
Mr. President, I second the nomination of David Schaefer for President Pro Tempore.
Chair recognizes senator from the 4th speak to the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I'm honored to stand before you today and second the nomination, or submit the nomination of Senator David Schaefer for a second term as President Pro Tem. You know, the dictionary defines pro tem as for a temporary time, but I will tell you that what our President Pro Tem does is so much more than that, because he works for all of us. All 55 senators look to him not just for his presiding when the Lieutenant Governor leaves the podium, but on a day-to-day basis, managing the affairs of the Senate, from procedural matters to the office staff, to the services that we all expect as senators are part of his duties. Now, this can be a daunting job, especially working and managing people, as he would probably tell you. But I would share with you my observation as to Senator Schaefer's problem-solving acumen. He's thoughtful, he's aware of people's feelings, and I think truly works to find solutions where everybody wins. You know, I've seen this problem solving up close when he was serving, and I was a member of, he was serving as chairman of the Regulated Industries and Public Utilities Committee, and I was a member. And these are issues that come before that committee that are often very knotty issues and very complicated. I admired the way that Senator Schaefer normally brought both sides together and worked towards a solution that all could live with. Now, whoever said that if both sides are a little unhappy, then it's probably a pretty good compromise, then I believe there's some truth in that as well. But I believe this. Senator David Schaefer loves this state, loves this Senate, its history, its process, and its members. And we're fortunate to have a man of his talents, temperament, and resolve as our President Pro Tem. And I urge your unanimous election of Senator David Schaefer as President Pro Tem. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any other nominations? The chair hears none, and the nominations are closed. The chair recognizes Senator from the 46th, the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent the nominations be closed and the Secretary of the Senate be instructed to cast the vote of the entire body for Senator David Schaefer.
Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the nominations are closed, and the Secretary will cast all votes for Senator from the 48th, and I declare Senator David Schaefer duly elected as the President Pro Tempore of the State Senate. I would ask that the Senator from the 46th, the Senator from the 41st, and the Senator from the 4th, the Dean of the Senate, to go to the rear of the chamber and provide the escort committee for the President Pro Tempore of the body. I now recognize the Sergeant at Arms.
Mr. President, the Honorable David Schaefer, elected President Pro Tem of the Georgia Senate, awaits, along with the Committee of Escort, to enter this chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Sergeant at Arms. Please allow the President Pro Tempore, along with his escort committee, and escort them to the rostrum at this time. It is now my honor to recognize the President Pro Tem of this august body, the Senator from the 48th.
Thank you so very much for electing me to another term as your President Pro Tem. Special thanks to the members of the Senate Republican Caucus who selected me as their nominee, to the Senator from the 4th District for his generous words of support, the Senator from the 6th District for seconding my nomination, and the leader of the Senate Democratic Caucus who offered this morning to second my nomination. I am privileged to serve and grateful for the confidence that you've placed in me, and I hope you'll indulge me for just a moment while I share a few thoughts with you. In the 15 years that I've served as a member of the State Senate, I'm embarrassed to tell you that over that period of time, I've gained over 50 pounds. But every January, when I come into this building for the new legislative session, I am surrounded by people who tell me how good I look and ask how much weight I've lost and what my secrets were. This building is made of limestone and marble and granite and intricately carved woodwork. but it's also made of mirrors. They're not mirrors made of glass, but they're mirrors that project images nonetheless, that make us all for this 40 days each year seem a little smarter, a little funnier, more eloquent, and more capable than we really are. And we've got to be careful not to let those images overtake us. My wife and my family's not with me today, but my wife and daughter were with me 4 years ago when I was first elected President Pro Tem, and in tribute to them, I said something that's important. I said that I get all the love that I need from 3898 Sweet Bottom Drive in Duluth, Georgia. And that's an important message for each of us. Do not look for love, for validation in any form in this building, because there is none to be had. I remember the very first committee meeting that I attended as a member of the Senate. Afterwards, one of the lobbyists came up to me and said, "You conducted yourself brilliantly." And just as I was about to swell with pride, it occurred to me that the only thing that I had done at the meeting was say, "I second the motion." Do not let yourself be defined by what happens here. Do not let yourself be defined by the strength or prestige of your committee assignments, by the fleeting praise of the lobbyists, by the seductive attention of the newspaper reporters, because when you allow yourself to be defined by those meaningless things, you are lost. You are lost. I want to share with you a story that I've shared each time I've been elected President Pro Tem. I struggled as a young person in Sunday school. I had a hard time with the curriculum. I had trouble with some of the central messages of the Christian faith, the parables in particular. I did not understand why the runaway son got the feast and the loyal son had to capture and slay whatever animal they served for the feast. I questioned the wisdom of leaving the 99 sheep unguarded when the one was lost. I had a real trouble with the whole idea of turning the other cheek. I could understand running away if you weren't going to strike back, but standing there and getting beaten didn't make much sense to me. But there was one parable that I understood immediately without anyone having to explain it to me. It was called the Parable of the Talents. And for those of you who are not regular attenders of Sunday school, in the Parable of the Talents, a wealthy man leaves town for a while and divides his fortune among 3 managers to take care of in his absence. One of those managers takes his share of the fortune and buries it in the ground for safekeeping. The other manager takes his share of the fortune and lends it out to others, basically makes a deposit in the biblical equivalent of a bank. And the third takes his share of the fortune and he buys fields and flocks. No one had to explain to me that the one who had bought fields and flocks had done right, and the one who had buried his treasure in the sand or in the ground had done poorly. I view public service through that prism. The titles that we have and the titles that we covet, whether it be senator or chairman or president pro tem or governor, they in and of themselves are simply treasure, and in and of themselves are no more valuable than the treasure that is buried in the ground. What's important is what we do with those titles. And I encourage each of you to keep in mind why we are here, that the decisions that we make impact the lives of people. Don't get caught up in the drama of what happens here and in the grandiosity of our own ideas. Keep in mind that every decision that we make impacts people, that the money that we get to spend first has to be earned by somebody and taken from them before we get to exercise stewardship over it. That the visions that we have for how Georgia ought to run, that people have burdens to comply with those and pay penalties when they don't. I encourage each of you to be mindful of the responsibility that has been put into you, and I promise you that I'll be mindful of the responsibility that's put in me, and let's try to use the stewardship opportunity that we have to do the very best by the citizens of this state. Thank you so very much again for your confidence in me.
The next order of business will be the election of the Secretary of the Senate. I recognize the President Pro Tem for a motion at this time.
Mr. President, it is my privilege to nominate David A. Cook for Secretary of the Senate.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 41st.
Mr. President, I second the nomination of David Cook for Secretary of the Senate.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 46th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the nominations be closed and the Assistant Secretary of the Senate be instructed to cast the vote of the entire body for David Cook.
Is there objection? The chair hears none, and I declare the nominations closed and David Cook is duly elected Secretary of the Senate. Mr. Sergeant at Arms, please escort the Secretary of the Senate to the rostrum at this time.
Mr. President, the Honorable David Cook, elected President, Secretary of the Georgia Senate, awaits to enter this chamber.
Mr. Sergeant at Arms, please escort the Secretary of the Senate to the rostrum at this time. We'd like to, first of all, administer the oath to the Secretary of the Senate. If you would, please repeat after me with your left hand on the Bible and your right hand raised. I do hereby solemnly swear that I will discharge my duties faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge, so help me God. Congratulations. It's my honor now to ask the Secretary of the Senate to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Governor. Members of the Senate, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this great opportunity to serve you all. I am really honored and humbled by this opportunity. I look forward to working with each of you. If I can ever be of help, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. The next order of business will be the election of the Sergeant at Arms. It's my honor now to recognize Senator from the 51st, the Majority Whip, for the purpose of making nomination.
Mr. President, it is indeed an honor for me today to nominate John Long for Sergeant at Arms of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. I now recognize Senator from the 38th, the Minority Caucus Chair, for the purpose of seconding the nomination.
Mr. President, I second the nomination of John Long for Sergeant at Arms.
Are there any other nominations? I recognize the Majority Leader, the Senator from the 46th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the nominations be closed and the Secretary of the Senate be instructed to cast the vote of the entire body for John Long.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, and I declare the nominations closed and John Long as duly elected Sergeant at Arms. Mr. Doorkeeper. Thank you, Mr. Doorkeeper. Please present the Sergeant at Arms to the State Senate at this time. Congratulations very much. All senators having bills or resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. The chair now recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that Senate Resolutions 1 and Senate Resolutions 4 be engrossed.
The senator from the 46th district has moved that SR 1 and SR 4 be engrossed. Are there any objections? There is objection. Secretary will read SR 1 and SR 4.
Senate Resolution 1, a resolution by Senator Schaefer, Mullis, Cowsert, and others, a resolution adopting the rules of the Senate and for other purposes. Senate Resolution 4, a resolution by Senator Schaefer, Cowsert, Gooch, and others, a resolution relative to the officials, employees, and committees of the Senate and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st to speak to the motion on engrossment.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, won't take up much of your time, but the processes that we run through during the course of this term, which are codified in our Senate rules, are very important. And as you know, we had a committee studying some of these rules in interim. I have some disagreements with some of those rules. Many of you have just found out today what those rules changes will be. Issues like how long personal privileges are, how long conference committees will lay on the table. I think the beneficial thing would be to allow input, allow suggestions, allow debate and discussions. As Pro Tem so eloquently stated, our job here is for public service. Our job is to serve the people of Georgia. And asking more of us to bring information and input can only be something that strengthens us. We can strengthen these rules today if we allow input, discussion, and allow the chance for changes. So I would ask you that not vote against engrossing these rules as they're brought forth. So again, we can spend the day to make sure that they are something we are all proud of and comfortable with, and that they cannot be further improved so that we can serve the people in our district and the people of this state better. So I ask that we do not engross, that we work constructively with no gotcha kind of resolutions, no gotcha amendments, but working to make sure they're the very best they can be for the citizens of Georgia. So I ask that you vote no on the motion to engross. I'll yield the well if there's no questions, Mr. President.
There are no questions. Any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? All those in favor of the motion for engrossment will rise, stand, and be counted. Rise, stand, and be counted if you are in favor of the motion for engrossment of SR 1 and SR 4. Chair recognizes Senator from 39th. What purpose you rise?
Can we put this on the board, please?
Senator is moving the ayes and nays. We've already called for the vote. That'll be perfectly fine. Let's just go ahead and put it on the board and see if the board's going to work well this session. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. wants to speak? On the motion of engrossment, the yeas are 37 and the nays are 18, and the two resolutions have been engrossed. Now we'll take up SR1. Secretary will read SR1.
Senate Resolution 1 by Senator Schaefer of the 48th, Moser of the 53rd, Cowser of the 46th, and others. A resolution adopting the rules of the Senate and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the Senate that the rules of the Senate in effect at the adjournment of the 2016 regular session of the General Assembly are hereby adopted as the rules of the Senate for the 2017-2018 biennium of the General Assembly unless and until otherwise provided by resolution of the Senate with the following amendments. Section 1, the rules of the Senate are amended by revising paragraph A of Rules 1-5.1 as follows. All sessions of the Senate and all meetings of Senate committees shall be open to the public except by a majority vote of a quorum of a committee or subcommittee. A meeting may be closed to the public when the committee or subcommittee is 1, discussing the future acquisition of real estate. 2, discussing the appointment, employment, and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Senator in the 48th, the distinguished President Pro Tem, to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my privilege to speak to Senate Resolution 1, proposing a series of changes to the rules of the Senate. This document came from the Senate Study Committee on Legislative Process, very capably chaired by the senator from the 53rd District over the last several months. He held 3 open meetings, received over 100 proposed changes to the rules. The committee debated each of those in open session and agreed on the document that you have in front of you at a public meeting held on Thursday, December the 29th, almost 2 weeks ago. There is only one change from that document, and I will draw that to your attention as I move through the sections of the resolution before you. Section 1 very simply creates the ability of committees of the state Senate to go into executive session for the purpose of receiving security briefings. It tracks the language in OCGA 50, 1872-25. Section 2, and this is the only thing that is different than from what the Study Committee on Legislative Process approved. It makes a couple of changes to committees. It consolidates the Judiciary and Judiciary Non-Civil Committee into a single committee. We discovered that we had 3 Judiciary committees and only 9 lawyers, and so we reduced the number of Judiciary County committees down from 3 to 2, and then we made some minor changes to the membership of several other committees in order to accommodate that change. Section 3 simply clarifies that minority reports to bills will be filed and archived but not published in full in the Journal. It also clarifies that local legislation can only be placed on the local consent calendar if it's assigned as local legislation. It's simply a clarification of existing practice. Section 4 allows committee chairmen to cancel meetings up to 1 hour before the meeting begins. There was an old rule that required committee chairmen to cancel meetings 24 hours in advance. Section 5 confirms existing practices. It allows changes to be made in committee assignments when a vacancy occurs by death or resignation of a senator. Section 6 also clarifies existing practice or confirms existing practice, allows any ex officio member of a committee to be removed by the Committee on Assignments. Section 7, I'll make some changes to how our study committees operate. It allows study committees only, and study committees, again, are looking at issues. They're not actually handling legislation, but it allows study committees only to conduct meetings by teleconference. Section 8 makes changes to the requirements for conference committee reports to be laid on the table. For the first 35, under the old rules, for the first 35 days of the session, conference committee reports had to lay over one night before they could be considered. And in the last 5 days of the session, only had to lay on the desk for 2 hours. We actually extended the rule that requires committee reports to be laid over for one night to an additional day, to day 36. The 2-hour rule then kicks in on day 37. And that 2-hour rule can only be waived by a vote of a majority of the Senate. Section 9 codifies the current practice used in removing, used for removal of a senator's name from a bill that he or she has sponsored. Section 10 allows the early closing of the hopper on Friday afternoon. Section 11 conforms, this is a significant change, an important change. It conforms the Senate rules dealing with fiscal notes to the provisions of the Georgia Fiscal Note Act. Section 12 is another significant change. It changes crossover day from day 30 to day 28, so that a bill introduced in the House or Senate has to leave the chamber in which it's introduced by the 28th day of the session instead of the 30th, and that will give us, each chamber, an additional 2 days to consider legislation that originates in the other chamber. Section 13, again, confirms existing practice. It clarifies that on local bills that that the signature introducing the bill is not the same as the signature releasing it for the consent calendar, that each of those are separate acts that require separate signatures. Section 14 deals with confirmation of appointments. There's some word changes. We changed the word nomination to appointment throughout, and we add language contemplating the Senate's confirmation of appointees to the Judicial Qualification Commission. Those appointees are made not just by the governor, but by the lieutenant governor and by the speaker. Section 15 actually implements some changes made in Section 16 by striking the commemorative, the calendar for, the consent calendar for commemorative resolutions. Section 16 actually does strike the commemorative calendar for consent resolutions. These resolutions have the force of law, and you know, on reflection, we believe that they need to be voted on separately. There's also language in here affecting the change of crossover day from day 30 to day 28, and additional language requiring bills to be immediately transmitted on day 28, the new crossover day. Section 17 merges the rule dealing with the call of the Senate with the rules dealing with quorum requirements. It's no substantive change from the current rule. Section 18 is another word change. We changed the word subordinate to subsidiary to match the parliamentary style manuals. Section 19 implements the changing crossover day from day 30 to day 28. Section 20 again deals with the merging of the call of the Senate rule with the quorum requirements. Section 21 is a substantive change. There were some suggestions to reduce the time allowed for points of personal privilege. We actually reached a compromise in the study committee on legislative process. Under the new rule, points of personal privilege will be the full 5 minutes until day 20, at which time they will be reduced to 3 minutes. Section 22 again confirms existing practice. It deals with the use of visual aids in the Senate chamber. Section 23 again confirms existing practice. It gives the authority of the Senate Committee on Administrative Affairs to set the rules for the gallery. And Section 24 makes no substantive changes. It simply rearranges the paragraphs dealing with the process of changing the rules so that they're clear and better organized. And I urge you to your favorable consideration of this resolution, and if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
Senator from the 39th, you wish to ask a question or the floor? Senator from the 29th, you wish the floor or a question? Floor? There are no further questions. You're asking for the floor as well? Let me take them in order. Chair recognizes Senator from the 39th. You'd rather defer to the senator from the 41st. Senator from the 41st is recognized to speak to SR 1.
Thank you, members of the Senate and Ms. President, for allowing me to get up here and talk about these important issues. You know, there are several things that we discussed in the committee that we agreed on would benefit the Senate. There were some that I have strong disagreements with, and I hope that you will reject the Senate rules today and allow us to redo them, prepare them, that's fair for everybody. You know, the pro tem mentioned that there had been a compromise on the amount of time for personal privilege, but a compromise, I think, infers that there was a meeting of the minds and agreement. That was not the case. The Democrats opposed it, and we voted against it. Yes, the pro tem changed the original proposition, which would have been 3 minutes the entire session, to only the last 20 days, but it's still, I think, a move in the wrong direction. You know, through the history of this state, we have allowed, for over 200 years, a greater time than is what proposed under these rules will be for us to get up and talk about the important issues that affect Georgia citizens. You know, as minority members, we understand that there'll be reapportionment, redistricting, and that you may get 45% of the statewide vote and yet control only 32% of the seats. We understand that. We've also learned to understand that in some of the committees, the representation has been under the 33rd or 32% that we've had in the past. And certain members of the majority party say this session we may see some improvement on that, and I'm sure that there's been some concern by some of the leaders in the Republican Party that they be fair on that issue. So hopefully we'll see some of our representation improve, but we have to deal with that. We have to deal that we engross more bills than ever before, like we did with the Senate rules today, where we were not able to offer alternative plans for both the majority and minority party to discuss and vote on. We see that done more. So one of the few things we have to turn to is points of personal privilege. For instance, I'm minority leader and I introduced 2 general bills last term. Neither one of those bills had a hearing. Neither one called up by a chairman even to be discussed. The only way I could discuss important things like whether you should show a carry permit to a police officer if he requests it is to take a point of personal privilege. These are important issues. In the study committee, someone said, well, you can convey a lot. The Gettysburg Address was done in under 3 minutes. You can convey a lot of interest and information in that amount of time. And that is true. And most of the time when we take the well, our points of personal privilege are under 3 minutes. But we deal with a complex, if you include federal funds, over a $40 billion state budget, complex issues on education, on health care, on things that affect the personal lives of many, many people in this state. And if we need to take more than 3 minutes, and we only ask for 5, I don't think that's asking too much. When I got elected in 1991, we had 10 minutes a day of personal privilege. I don't think that was too much. I ask you to reject the change. I think it constricts the voice of my constituents, not my voice, and it restricts your ability to hear good ideas or good thoughts or things that might change your mind or motivate you to a better place. I ask you to reject that. I also ask you to look at the changes that we're making in the conference committee reports and how long they lay over. You know, at the end of the session, we are battling to stay informed on the bills and issues that we vote on. We made a good change last time when we expanded from 1 hour to 2 hours the amount the conference committees had to lay over those last couple days. I think we should stick to that. We should show the House and we should show our constituents that we want to understand what we're voting on. We want to make sure it's right for the people of Georgia. And you can't always do that when you got 100 different issues in an hour. It's terribly hard to do it in 2 hours or many times. And it's a standard that is not in the extreme. Other states do it. And I've heard some of those states are full-time legislators or not. People of Georgia deserve no less quality of service, whether we're full-time or part-time. And we should know what we're voting on, and we should know how it affects our citizens. Also in these rules, there's another change that I consider less onerous, but still I have concerns with and wish we'd been able to amend and change, and that is on the issue of study committees. Listen, I have been to hundreds of study committees over my course of time in the legislature. And by being in the room, I got a more richer, fuller version of what was going on. I think being able to call in and do that remotely, you're not going to get as many people to study committees. It will have that unintended consequence. It will also not afford the people who are participating the full amount of knowledge they should receive and can receive in person. And also, I think the citizens of Georgia will have some concerns about us calling in and then getting a per diem day for a day that we were maybe at home or at work, where we called in and we started doing other things. I think that there are some concerns there as far as trust and what's appropriate. I don't think we should do it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you will show those that we need to work on these rules further. We certainly need rules to act on and operate under. But if we vote no today, we can send a message that they can be improved and bettered. And we will do that, I suspect, later today. So I urge my colleagues to vote no on these rules and stand firm with me in saying that lowering, when we've already done it more than a decade ago from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, lowering even further how much time we have for a point of personal privilege to represent our constituents and talk about the interesting but complex and important issues that face our state is not the way to go. I will answer any questions, or I will yield the well if there are no questions, Mr. President.
There are no questions,
Thank
Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 39th. Speak to the resolution.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I rise in opposition to Senate Resolution 1. It has already been made reference to the Gettysburg Address, and probably the most important part of that address, that speech, is in the last line when it said that government was for the people, by the people, and of the people. So this issue here this morning is not about politicians. It's not about people's feelings getting hurt. It's about shutting down the voice of the people. And, you know, this is not about technical inside politics. This is about whether people duly elected by the people, whether senators directly elected by the people are going to have a voice to speak their constituents' concerns. This is unnecessary. It was unnecessary years ago when the majority party, when they were in the minority party used to line up in a file and take their 10 minutes. And members of the majority party, the minority party then, were punished when they didn't take every last minute. But we didn't change the rules. We allowed the minority party to be obstructionist because the minority party has the right to speak for the people that they represent. It's ironic. We voted for engrossment. We passed engrossment of rules that we restricted the debate on rules that restrict debate. That's a double whammy, isn't it? Points of personal privilege. I mean, and let's be very clear. Let the public know, this isn't just about shutting down Democrats. This is about shutting down Republicans who may have independent thinking, independent thoughts that may stray from the path. This is not about just shutting down the minority party. It's about shutting down members of the majority who see the world differently. You know, one of the things that must be said is that the minority party has not abused points of personal privilege. We have not. We have used points of personal privilege relatively sparingly. Maybe that needs to change after day 20. Maybe we need to take our full 3 minutes. Maybe there'll be emergency rules change then and cut points of personal privilege down to 30 seconds. Or maybe they'll be cut out altogether. But it is an affront to democratic ideals that this body would do these things. It's unnecessary. One of the things that has not been talked about is the lack of the broadcasting of committees. And we've been given excuses that we don't have the technical expertise to broadcast committees. I've got a 7-year-old granddaughter that you could hire to broadcast any committee meeting you got. My 7-year-old granddaughter could do it. You know, and it's ironic. In the rules, we're adding video conferencing of study committees. We can video conference study committees, but we can't broadcast regular committees. And the House does it. I'm a little bit ashamed that the House is more advanced than we are. Can you believe that? The Senate is taking a back seat on transparency and openness in government to the House of Representatives across the way. That's something I thought I'd never see 20 years ago when I came to this place. You know, I had an amendment on that. I had an amendment which was designed to require the broadcasting of committee meetings. I can't offer it. I've lost the time to debate it. I'm mentioning it now. But that's the kind of thing, thoughtful thing, that we are not being able to debate. This is wrong what you're doing. Some people in the majority party, not all senators in the majority party, but this is wrong. It sets a tone for the entire session. It sets a tone for the entire session. That transparency and openness is a secondary consideration in the Georgia State Senate. Shame on us. Shame. I yield the well unless there are questions, and I'll be glad to take whatever questions there are.
There are no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Senator 29 to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want the opportunity to explain myself. Probably don't have enough time to do that, but I rise to tell you, first of all, I will be voting in favor of Senate Resolution 1. I cast my no vote on December the 29th and was in a distinct minority. 11 days from today, we will be swearing in, I think maybe for the first time in American history, a president with no prior government service or experience. And I would submit to you the reason for that has to do with things like what we're debating today. I do want to talk about what I think are the good parts of this process and this resolution. I think the moving up of crossover day is a welcome change and will help our process. I'm very appreciative of the Rules Chairman having an open and public process and an opportunity for all of us who had concerns to bring those forward and have an open discussion and debate. But I do want to talk about what I think are the problematic points and the reason that I did cast a no vote on December the 29th. First of all, the period of time we have to review legislation. I've gotten to a point where it's very rare on day 39 or day 40 that I vote yes. And it's not because all the legislation is necessarily objectionable, it's because I don't know what I'm voting on. And I think that it's common sense to say, whatever the period you think it might be, maybe it's 24 hours, maybe it's less than that, for us to have the time to understand what it is we're voting on, and frankly, for the people that we represent to have the time to react and respond. And for a moment, just to talk specifically about conference committee reports, these are not academic questions. These are not things that have never happened that are just abstract objections. When we considered House Bill 170 in 2015, the conference committee report contained a $5 per night tax on hotel rooms. And forget about the policy. Forget about whether or not you think that's good or bad policy. For that to be placed on members' desks at 9:30 in the evening on day 39 and for us to then vote at 11:45 in the evening is wrong. We should not be put in that position as members. I had constituents in the hospitality industry that wanted to be heard. They couldn't be heard because they didn't even know what had happened until the bill had already been passed and sent to the governor. But that's also true for bills that are on final passage or special orders. We had a bill reforming Georgia's watchdog agency for judicial ethics, the Judicial Qualifications Commission. It was House Bill 808. I came down to this, it was well after midnight, to speak to it and to speak to the issues with it. Now we have a situation where the old JQC has been abolished. We're going to have a new JQC for 6 months. And then after June 30th, there's a third JQC that comes into play. That's because of poorly drafted legislation that we didn't have an opportunity to vet or understand. Restricting points of personal privilege. You know, I'm not afraid of what the senator from the 39th or the senator from the 41st or anybody else has to say. I think this is a deliberative body, and deliberative bodies debate. They have discussion. They have dialogue. Frankly, I think that having more time for points of personal privilege would make sense, and restricting it, I think, is certainly a step in the wrong direction. On conference committees also, during the interim, during the summer, I was flipping around on TV and actually saw a congressional conference committee on C-SPAN, and I was probably the only one watching, but they had televised, the conference committee meeting, and there was actual dialogue and discussion and debate, and you got to see that process all the way through to the end. We don't have that opportunity here. The public is not available to see what happens in a conference committee process, and that ought to be changed. That ought to be changed for our other committees as well. The people we represent ought to be, they shouldn't have to drive to the Capitol to see what our business is and what business we're doing. There ought to be additional opportunities for the public to interact with the General Assembly through electronic means. I think the other thing that these rules do and that needs to be drawn attention to is that the 2-hour rule that was referenced earlier in debate, we are now putting a sort of caveat on that it can be suspended by a majority. So it's actually a huge step backward. Even a 1-hour rule that required 2/3 of the chamber to vote to suspend it is better than a 2-hour rule that can be immediately suspended with just 29 people voting on it. So we've essentially installed a rule change now that allows us to go to immediate votes on conference committee reports like we already can do on special orders. Floor amendments by recorded vote. We were going to have the vote on engrossment today, I guess by a hand count, and then the senator from the 39th raised an objection and wanted it recorded. Now, this will probably be the only time in our 80 days over the next 2 years that led immediately to a recorded vote. One senator demanding a recorded vote gets a recorded vote. Under these rules, you've got to have 5 members ask for a recorded vote. Any one of us that sits here representing 175,000 people ought to be given the dignity of demanding a recorded vote on a floor amendment. The other issue that I would mention is when we adjourn on the 40th day of the legislative session. When I first got elected, we adjourned at midnight. That was just sort of understood. We were going to adjourn at midnight. I think the last 3 years, it's been later and later, but it's definitely been after midnight every time. We've definitely been passing multiple bills every time. And for those of you who have been down here for that, it's just not the way you would want to conduct your business. Nominations and the confirmation process. For us to hold a vote, I would rather us bring forward a constitutional amendment getting rid of the Senate's confirmation authority than continuing to exercise it in the manner that we have over the last several years, where we cast one vote on over 1,000 names. There's very little time to review. There's no committee process. There's no vetting. We're just given a list and basically told, vote yes or no. I do, again, appreciate the opportunity to come down here and explain the issues I have. The rules that we are going to pass do have an amendment process, and I think all of those of us who have concerns ought to look at that and potentially take advantage of that process to continue to raise these issues. Because, we know what the vote's going to be today. I'm not going to take up a whole bunch of your time, but what I am going to say is this discussion needs to continue because for those of us, particularly in the majority party, we should be at the leading edge of making our government accessible, open, and transparent, and we can and should do better. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield if there are any questions. If not, I'll yield the will.
There is a question. Chair recognizes Senator in the 41st, the Minority Leader.
Will the Senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it not true that when we started this process of the committee, the chairman asked members of the Senate and sent to all members a request for recommended changes, of which you followed through and made some recommendations of your own for changes? Is that not? And he set a deadline for us to do that?
That is true.
And at that first meeting, is it not true that myself, who had some, like ending at midnight or proportional representation on committees, made our case, and you were there with a couple of yours and made your case? Is that not true?
That is true.
Is it not further true that the rule to change our points of personal privilege from 5 to 3 minutes was something that was not written by an individual senator or proposed early in a timely manner as you and I did with our recommendations, but it was something the chairman brought to the last committee meeting, and only that last committee meeting were we able to debate and discuss that, shortening our personal privilege points?
It wasn't discussed at the meeting I attended. Beyond that, I don't have any personal knowledge.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the resolution? Is the objection agreed in the Report of Committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? All those in favor of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 37 and the nays are 18, and the resolution is therefore adopted. Secretary will read SR 2.
Senate Senate Resolution 2 by Senator Schaefer the 48th, Cowsert of the 46th, Gooch of the 51st, and others. A resolution to notify the House of Representatives that the Senate has convened and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the Senate that the Secretary of the Senate is hereby instructed to notify the House of Representatives that the Senate has convened in regular session and is now ready for the transaction of business. This concludes the order.
This is a resolution to notify that the Senate has convened. Is there objection? Without objection, SR2 will be approved, and we will notify the House that the Senate has convened. Secretary will read SR3.
Senate Resolution 3 by Senator Schaefer the 48th, Cowsert of the 46th, Gooch of the 51st, and others, to notify a resolution to notify the governor that the General Assembly has convened and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the General Assembly of Georgia that a committee of 14, 7 from the House of Representatives to be named by the Speaker, and 7 from the Senate to be named by the President of the Senate, be appointed to notify His Excellency the Governor that the General Assembly has convened and for other purposes.
Is there objection? Without objection, the resolution is therefore adopted, and we have notifying the governor. The chair will appoint to committee of notification the senator from the 4th, the senator from the 49th, the senator from the 48th, and the committee will meet with the secretary in the back of the chamber immediately upon adjournment in order to notify the governor that the Senate has convened. Secretary will read SR4, the housekeeping resolution.
Senate Resolution 4 by Senator Schaefer the 48th, Cowsert of the 46th, Gooch of the 51st, and others. A resolution relative to officials, employees, and committees in the Senate and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the Senate that the following provision shall be in effect during the 2017 to 2018 biennium of the General Assembly unless and until otherwise provided for by resolution of the Senate and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 48th to speak to the resolution.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it's my privilege to present Senate Resolution 4, the biennial housekeeping resolution. This resolution authorizes the hiring of staff by the Secretary of the Senate's office, the President of the Senate's office, and the Senate itself, and deals with general budgetary matters. It is word for word identical to the resolution that we approved 2 years ago, with one exception. The salary of the Secretary of the Senate has been increased 4%, which reflects the 1% and the 3% salary increases that were given the last 2 years to all employees of the Senate, except the President of the Senate, except the Secretary of the Senate, whose salary is only set by this resolution. I urge your favorable consideration. If there are no questions, I will yield the well.
There are no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agree in the Porter Committee which fail pass the bill? Chair is none. Porter Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? All those in favor of the resolution will vote aye, and those opposed no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 53 and the nays are 1. And this resolution, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Senator from the 46th, approach, please. Typically, we would be waiting on the message from the House on the adjournment resolution, and it looks like they are running a little bit behind. We could suspend and wait in waiting, but it's not absolutely necessary for that. Are there any members wishing to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Are there any announcements? There are no announcements. Thank you all very, very much for your patience today as we move through the very, very first day. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, January the 10th. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. We stand adjourned. Let me remind each of you that Judge Bethel will be available for some pictures for you and your family.